They found the backpacks first, both of them, neatly arranged side by side at the trailhead, still packed with 3 days' worth of supplies, untouched water bottles, and a handwritten itinerary that would never be completed. And here's what made every investigator's blood run cold. Inside Caitlin's bag was her insulin kit, the one she literally couldn't survive more than 72 hours without. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where this nightmare actually began. June 14, 2019. Yellowstone National Park. Caitlin Osworth and her boyfriend Trevor Nguyen were the kind of couple that made everyone else feel inadequate about their own relationships. 26 and 28 respectively. Both software engineers from Portland who'd quit their jobs 6 months earlier to hike the Pacific Northwest Trail from end to end. Their Instagram account, at Wandering Together, had amassed over 47,000 followers documenting their adventures through Montana, Idaho, and Washington. But the thoroughfare region? That was supposed to be their grand finale. The most remote wilderness in the lower 48 states, over 30 miles from the nearest road in any direction. A place so isolated that the ranger station there is literally considered the most remote residence in the continental United States. Trevor's last Instagram post, uploaded at 6:42 a.m. on June 14th, showed them grinning at the 9-mile trailhead. The caption read, "Starting the thoroughfare trek, 33 miles of pure wilderness to the ranger station and back. If we go silent for a few days, don't worry, no cell service out here. See you on the other side." That photo got 3,200 likes, 68 comments wishing them luck. It would be the last time anyone heard from them. Trevor's sister, Lynn, was the first to sound the alarm. When they hadn't posted anything by June 20th, for days past their expected return, she called the Park Service. At first, rangers weren't overly concerned. Hikers often extended their trips or got delayed by weather. But then they checked the trailhead. That's when they found the backpacks. Lead Ranger Diane Kovacs, a 17-year veteran of Yellowstone's backcountry operations, knew immediately something was catastrophically wrong. "In all my years, I've never seen anything like it," she told investigators. "Hikers don't leave their packs. They don't leave their supplies. And they absolutely don't leave life-saving medication sitting at a trailhead while they walk into the most unforgiving wilderness in the lower 48. Within hours, a full-scale search and rescue operation launched. Helicopters swept the thoroughfare. Ground teams combed every inch of the 33-mile trail. Dive teams searched the Yellowstone River. Cadaver dogs worked dawn to dusk. Nothing. Not a single trace. No torn clothing. No signs of bear attack. No disturbed campsites. No footprints veering off trail. It was as if Caitlin and Trevor had simply evaporated the moment they left the parking lot. The media descended like locusts. Nancy Grace dedicated a full week to the case. Theories exploded across Reddit and Web Sleuths forums. Some thought they'd faked their disappearance to start new lives. Others suggested a serial killer was operating in the park. The darkest theories involved human trafficking rings. But here's what made this case so uniquely disturbing: Caitlin's insulin. Dr. Raymond Castellano, the endocrinologist who'd treated Caitlin's type 1 diabetes since childhood, was brought in to consult. His testimony would haunt everyone who heard it. Without her insulin, Caitlin would have entered diabetic ketoacidosis within 24 to 36 hours. By 48 hours, she would have been severely impaired, confusion, vomiting, difficulty breathing. By 72 hours, he paused. By 72 hours, without medical intervention, the outcome would have been fatal. There's no scenario where she voluntarily left that medication behind. For 6 weeks, the search consumed Yellowstone. Over 200 personnel combed the wilderness. The FBI joined. The Teton County Sheriff's Office. Search dogs from 3 states. They found a day hiker who'd passed through the area on June 15th. He'd seen nothing unusual. They interviewed every ranger who'd been in the region. They examined satellite imagery. They even consulted with survival experts about whether someone could survive that terrain without supplies. The answer was always the same: not possible. Especially not someone who needed insulin to survive. By late July, the search was officially suspended. Caitlin and Trevor were presumed deceased, though their bodies had never been recovered. The Park Service issued a statement expressing their condolences and promising to remain vigilant for any new evidence. The case went cold. Trevor's parents set up a memorial fund. Caitlin's mother appeared on Dateline, tears streaming down her face as she begged anyone with information to come forward. Their Instagram account became a digital shrine, with thousands of followers posting tributes and theories. But in law enforcement circles, the thoroughfare disappearance became something else. An unsolvable mystery. A black mark on Yellowstone's safety record, and a reminder that nature can swallow people whole without leaving a trace. Life, as it always does, moved on, until 11 months later when everything changed. May 8, 2020. Forest Service employee Jackson Pembroke was having a spectacularly bad day. The Cascade Ranger Station in Oregon's Willamette National Forest had been decommissioned in 1987. For 33 years, the old CCC-built structure had sat abandoned, slowly surrendering to the elements. The Forest Service had finally allocated funds for demolition, and Jackson, a structural inspector with 12 years of experience, had drawn the short straw for the pre-demolition assessment. The building was a nightmare. Rotted floorboards, a collapsed roof section, squirrel infestations, and that uniquely awful smell of decades of accumulated water damage. Jackson was documenting the basement level, flashlight in hand, trying to avoid stepping on the more questionable sections of floor. That's when his boot went through. "I actually felt it give way before I saw it," he'd later tell police. "My foot crashed through what I thought was just another section of rotten wood. But there was a hollow space underneath. A void where there shouldn't have been one." Using his flashlight, Jackson peered into the hole. He saw concrete. A smooth, poured concrete floor about 4 feet below the wooden basement floor, which made no architectural sense whatsoever. The original 1934 construction documents showed a dirt floor basement. There was no reason for a secondary concrete floor to exist beneath the wooden one. Jackson, perhaps unwisely but driven by curiosity, began pulling up more of the rotted floorboards. That's when he found the hatch. Hidden beneath decades of water-damaged wood and filth was a steel hatch, approximately 3 feet by 3 feet, with a heavy-duty padlock. The metal was rusted but still intact. Someone had built a sub-basement beneath the basement, a space that didn't exist in any official records. Jackson called his supervisor. His supervisor called the Lynn County Sheriff's Office. And the detective who responded, Janet Oleander, a 23-year veteran with a national reputation for solving cold cases, immediately recognized they'd stumbled onto something significant. "Hidden chambers don't just appear in government buildings," she explained to the rapidly assembling team. "Someone built this. Someone wanted a space that no one knew about. The question is why." It took a cutting torch to get through the lock. The hatch opened with a groan of metal on metal that echoed through the abandoned building. A ladder led down into darkness. Detective Oleander descended first. What she found would crack open one of the most baffling missing persons cases in National Park Service history. The chamber was approximately 15 feet by 20 feet with a ceiling height of just over 6 feet. It was sophisticated, reinforced concrete walls, weatherproofing, even the remnants of an electrical system jury-rigged to siphon power from the station above. Someone had spent considerable time and resources building this hidden space. But it was the contents that made Detective Oleander's blood run cold. Along one wall were 6 sleeping bags, still rolled and stored in their compression sacks. A Coleman camping stove, boxes of non-perishable food, granola bars, instant ramen, canned goods, all showing varying degrees of age and decay. Some items looked decades old. Others were suspiciously recent. And then there were the trophies. A hiking backpack, purple with gray trim, still containing a wallet. The driver's license inside belonged to Michelle Holloway, a 29-year-old graduate student who'd vanished during a solo hike on the Pacific Northwest Trail in July 2008. Her case had never been solved. A University of Washington lanyard attached to a set of keys. The keys belonged to Brian Cutler, who disappeared during a backpacking trip in the Mt. Hood National Forest in September 2013. The case remained open, his body never recovered. A women's watch, engraved on the back, "To Amanda, love always, Dad." Amanda Reeves had disappeared while hiking near Mt. Rainier in May 2016. Her family had spent years searching for her. Detective Oleander's hands were shaking as she cataloged each item. But it was what she found in the corner that made her radio for immediate backup. 2 more backpacks, 1 teal, 1 charcoal gray. And when she opened them, she found Trevor Nguyen's laptop and Caitlin Osworth's insulin kit. Within 24 hours, the Cascade Ranger Station was swarming with federal investigators. The FBI, the National Park Service, representatives from Oregon State Police, and, flying in from Wyoming, the entire team that had worked the thoroughfare disappearance case. The evidence was overwhelming. DNA testing confirmed the belongings matched the missing persons. But the real breakthrough came from Trevor's laptop. The device had been kept in a waterproof case, and miraculously, the hard drive was recoverable. What forensic specialists found would answer some questions while raising dozens more. The laptop contained video files. 4 of them, each filmed at different times with different lighting conditions. The first video showed Michelle Holloway, clearly distressed, speaking directly to camera. "My name is Michelle Holloway. Today is July 17, 2008. I'm being held in a basement somewhere in Oregon. I don't know where. Please, someone." The video cut off abruptly. The second showed Brian Cutler, gaunt and clearly malnourished, dated September 24, 2013. The third was Amanda Reeves from May 2016. The fourth video was Caitlin and Trevor. In the footage, dated June 15, 2019, both appeared unharmed but terrified. Trevor was speaking. "We were approached on the trail by someone claiming to be a ranger. He had a uniform, a badge, everything looked official. He said there'd been a bear attack nearby, and he needed to escort us back to the ranger station for safety. We didn't question it. Why would we?" Caitlin continued. "He led us off trail, maybe 2 miles. We thought we were going to a station, but instead, he forced us into a vehicle hidden in the trees. He had a gun. Her voice broke. The video ended. But here's where it gets truly disturbing. The forensic timeline showed Trevor had filmed this video on his laptop, likely when their captor wasn't present. The laptop had been hidden in his backpack, which the kidnapper must have discovered and confiscated, placing it in his trophy room without realizing the damning evidence it contained. The investigation now focused on one question: who was the fake ranger? The Cascade Ranger Station had been decommissioned in 1987, but Forest Service records showed the building wasn't completely abandoned until 1994. For those 7 years, it had occasionally been used for equipment storage and emergency shelter. Anyone familiar with the building could have built the subbasement during that transitional period. Moreover, the Cascade Station sat on a remote section of Forest Service Road 2672, rarely patrolled and surrounded by dense wilderness. The perfect location for someone who wanted privacy. Investigators compiled a list of everyone who'd worked at the station between 1987 and 1994. 12 names. 10 were quickly cleared. Most were deceased or had ironclad alibis for the various disappearances. That left 2. Gregory Falmouth and William Kensington. Gregory Falmouth had worked as a seasonal ranger from 1988 to 1992. He was 67 years old, living in a nursing home in Eugene, suffering from advanced Alzheimer's. He was physically incapable of abducting anyone. William Kensington was 61. He'd been a full-time Forest Service ranger from 1983 to 1995, when he'd taken early retirement. He'd worked at multiple stations throughout Oregon and Washington, including a 3-year stint at Cascade. His retirement file indicated he'd moved to Montana in 1996. According to DMV records, his current address was in Gardner, Montana, which just so happens to be the northern gateway to Yellowstone National Park. Detective Oleander felt her stomach drop. The pieces were falling into place with horrifying clarity. On May 12, 2020, a joint FBI and Park Service task force surrounded William Kensington's property, a remote cabin on 15 acres outside Gardner. They found him in his garage wearing a vintage Forest Service uniform, meticulously cleaning a Park Service badge. Inside the cabin, investigators discovered a level of planning that suggested decades of predatory behavior. Multiple uniforms from different agencies, fake IDs and badges, maps with trails marked and annotated, and a journal hundreds of pages detailing his methodology. William Kensington had been hunting hikers for over 30 years. His MO was consistent. Identify solo hikers or couples on remote trails, approach them in uniform, fabricate an emergency, bear attack, wildfire, medical emergency, and escort them off-trail to a waiting vehicle. From there, he'd transport them to his hidden chamber beneath the Cascade Station. The journal revealed something even more disturbing. Kensington had built the sub-basement in 1989, shortly after his transfer to Cascade. For years, he'd use his position to monitor trail activity, identify targets, and exploit the public's trust in uniformed rangers. His victims had been held in the chamber for varying lengths of time. The journal was vague on specifics, but the implications were sickening. When he'd finished with them, he disposed of their bodies in remote sections of wilderness he knew would never be thoroughly searched. The laptop videos were insurance policies. He'd forced his victims to record messages explaining their disappearance as kidnapping. If he was ever caught, he could claim he was the victim of a coerced confession and point to the videos as proof of his innocence. It was a twisted logic that revealed a deeply disturbed mind. But here's the part that keeps me awake at night. The journal contained 34 entries. Each entry was a different victim. Law enforcement had only found evidence of 7, which meant there were 27 more people out there. 27 families who might never know what happened to their loved ones. William Kensington's trial began in February 2021 and lasted 7 weeks. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence. The physical trophies, the laptop videos, the journal, DNA evidence, and testimony from forensic experts. The defense attempted to argue insanity and coercion, claiming the journal was fiction and the sub-basement had been built by someone else. None of it held water. On March 31, 2021, the jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning a verdict. Guilty on all counts, including 7 counts of first-degree murder. William Kensington was sentenced to 7 consecutive life terms without possibility of parole. During his sentencing, Caitlin's mother, Diane Osworth, read a victim impact statement. I'm not going to repeat it here. It's too raw, too painful. But she ended with this. My daughter trusted you. Everyone trusted you. You wore a badge that represented safety and protection, and you turned it into a weapon. I hope you spend every day of your life thinking about what you took from us. What you took from 34 families. Kensington never apologized. Never showed remorse. As he was led from the courtroom, he turned and smiled at the gallery. That smile still appears in my nightmares. The FBI's reconstruction of their final days is based on forensic evidence, Kensington's journal entries, and logical inference. On June 14th, Kensington had been monitoring the thoroughfare trailhead from a concealed position. He'd been working Yellowstone's remote areas for months. He knew the trails, the patterns, the opportunities. When he saw Caitlin and Trevor arrive alone, he saw his chance. Approximately 2 miles into their hike, Kensington approached them in a Yellowstone Ranger uniform, a perfect replica he'd ordered online. He told them there'd been a grisly attack on the trail ahead and offered to drive them to the Thoroughfare Ranger Station via a service road, which doesn't actually exist. They trusted him. Why wouldn't they? He was a ranger. He led them off-trail to a concealed vehicle, then produced a firearm and ordered them to remove their backpacks. He drove them the 500 miles back to Oregon overnight, keeping them sedated and restrained. By morning, they were in the sub-basement. According to the journal, Kensington kept Caitlin and Trevor in the chamber for 9 days. The entry for June 23rd simply reads, disposed. Site Gamma. Site Gamma refers to a location in the Mt. Jefferson Wilderness, a rugged, rarely traveled area of the Cascade Range. Despite extensive searching, their remains have never been found. What happened in those 9 days is something I deliberately haven't researched in detail. Some horrors don't need to be spelled out. Following Kensington's conviction, a multi-agency task force was formed to identify the other 27 victims mentioned in his journal. Cross-referencing his journal's dates and locations with missing persons databases from 1989 to 2019 has yielded 12 possible matches. The families of those victims have been notified, and DNA testing is ongoing. But many entries are frustratingly vague. Some contain only first names. Others have locations that could refer to dozens of different trails. Kensington is refusing to cooperate, taking whatever knowledge he has to the grave. The Forest Service and Park Service have implemented new safety protocols. GPS tracking for rangers in remote areas, verification systems for uniformed personnel, and enhanced communication systems for backcountry hikers. But the damage is done. The trust is broken. The old Cascade Ranger Station was demolished in June 2020. The sub-basement was filled with concrete and covered with earth. A small memorial now stands on the site, bearing the names of the 7 confirmed victims. Michelle Holloway, Brian Cutler, Amanda Reeves, Caitlin Osworth, Trevor Nguyen, and 2 others whose stories I haven't detailed here but who deserve to be remembered. The memorial's plaque reads, "In memory of those who trusted, and in warning to those who remain vigilant." I visit it sometimes, when I'm in Oregon. I stand there and think about Caitlin and Trevor, about their final Instagram post, about their dreams of hiking the Pacific Northwest Trail, about how a simple decision to trust someone in a uniform cost them everything. And I think about the 27 other families out there still wondering, still hoping, still waiting for answers that may never come. The thoroughfare disappearance is solved. Technically, we know who took them. We know what happened in broad strokes. But the trail ends in the wilderness. And some questions don't have answers. Only echoes in the dark. If you're a hiker reading this, please be careful out there. Always file detailed trip plans with someone you trust. Carry GPS devices. Trust your instincts. And if someone in a uniform approaches you in the backcountry with an emergency that sounds off, that feels wrong, trust that feeling. Because William Kensington proved that monsters don't always hide in the shadows. Sometimes they wear badges, and sometimes they're waiting on the trail,